Perfect. So we'll get started. First of all, welcome to the Active Schools Conference online, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I do know how busy schools currently are, so taking time out of your busy schedule to attend something like this, which is a CPD opportunity, is fantastic. We hope that the workshops are useful. We hope that there's a lot of takeaways as well. You to take away into your own setting. In the last 2 years, we have ran a face-to-face Active Schools Conference in Oldham in Greater Manchester, and last year's conference saw around 80 delegates joining us for the day. Unfortunately, this wasn't to be this academic year, so we decided to run an alternative conference online, which again we hope will still add some value and will still give you things that you can take back into your schools. A little bit of housekeeping just to start. I did set the meeting to mute everybody on arrival. Please keep your microphones muted during the workshops just so there's no background noise or interference. There will be time for Q&A at the end of each workshop, and that will be conducted by the workshop leaders. But if you do have any questions and you don't want to turn your microphones on, you feel free to use the chat box or email brianne@activeedu.co.uk if you're having any issues with that. It is myself, Dylan, hosting, and also Brianne will be hosting and joining us a little bit later on. And the running order for this afternoon is, first of all, the team at Teacup. We've got Lewis and Lee, who are going to be leading a workshop on influence versus control, your well-being. At 2 o'clock, we've got Steve Busby, who is delving into deep dives. And then at 3 o'clock, finishing our conference, is Ben Kirk from Inspired Playgrounds, taking you through how you can create an active playground. So I will stop talking. I will pass you over to Lewis and Lee at Teacup. If you just bear with us while I share the hosting. So I'll make you host, Lewis.
Super, thanks Dylan.
And over to you.
Superb, brilliant. Just pin myself and Lee. Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Dylan, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Myself and Lee from Teacup are going to talk to you a little bit about influence versus control, maximizing, your journey as individuals and as teams to a happier, healthy, and more successful life. A little bit of an overview for today. Housekeeping and introductions. Dylan's already done a little bit of housekeeping, but do feel free to pop questions in the chat as we go for the end, but we will answer questions at the end. Talking a little bit about how we respond in times of change, some self-care, influence versus control. Lee's going to give us some top tips from the world of elite sport, and also he now works as an executive coach, so has some great dealings there, and we're going to also give you some takeaways and some learnings. So as I said, some little introductions. Ooh, not too far. Myself from Teacup, Lewis. I'm business development manager, so my role for the business is growing the business. Previously to joining Teacup, I suppose I enjoyed a career in elite sport as a swimmer. Was fortunate to travel the country, travel the world, chasing my dream, and from that got some superb experiences and life experience. And one of the people that I met on that journey was Lee Mears, who is co-founder of Teacup, and I will hand over to Lee to do a little intro and some background on him.
Hi everybody. Well, thank you very much again for having us. I suppose some of you will be asking, what is Teacup? And for me, it's a measurement tool. I found, having gone from the sports world where it's amazing, you're an athlete, you get the best of service, you eat the right food, you get to exercise when you want, much to my wife's disgust. I do have a wife and 3 kids. I'd sleep when I needed to because everything was about preparing myself for performance. And then I came out of that sporting world and I came into the business world as an exec and a leadership coach. And I started to really see the stark differences, and how in the business world and even more so in schools, having done a bit of work with schools, I see how everybody puts other people first, work first, and then worries about trying to fit their wellness in around that. So I became a co-founder of Teacup, which is a tool, because in sport, as Lewis will tell you, he's a Commonwealth swimmer. You measure everything and you're trying to constantly find measure what matters. And so we came up with this Teacup tool, which helps you analyze your wellness so that you can perform better. And today we're going to hopefully talk about actually part of that sort of growth of Teacup is how do you keep hold and work on what you can and can't control.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lee. So if I just go to the next slide here, I think, we can all agree the past year has been really difficult. It's, unprecedented times, to say the very, very least. You guys especially, I think, will have been under immense pressure. Really tough time. And the impact of that, it's hard. Anxiety and stress have rocketed. We've seen it at Teacup, within the data itself. Sometimes it's quite hard to look at, and it's quite hard to see, the stress levels are really high. People are really unhappy, worried about finances, relationships are stretched, people's physical health's deteriorated, gyms have been closed. It's been tough. People have been demotivated. It's been a really, really hard time. And how do we respond in times of change? I think that's a big thing. At Teacup, we're all about measuring, analyzing, how do we respond in times of change? Lee's got some nice words to say here, so I'll quickly hand over to him.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for being teachers. When we've gone around all the different sort of areas and businesses and bits of life, without you guys, I don't know how I would still be alive. I think your stock has gone through the roof, having to try and homeschool my 3 little boys over the last year and a bit. Although I say me, it's more my wife that's done the majority of it. But with your world, and I'm not sort of professing for any minute that I've been in it, but there is this sense of customer, parents, interaction, children. There's so many different burdens, and this is a quote again from sports that I've seen misused quite a few times in business, and it is, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And this is an amazing quote from a South African golfer. And it's been so misconstrued, because I think what people thought is work hard, do more, and you'll achieve your goals. Whereas actually what he was saying was that the harder he works on himself, and when we talk about ourselves, I like to think of it as a well, probably for those of you who can't see, I'm not the skinniest person in the world, but I like to talk about pizza. And if you imagine a pizza sort of broken up into 8 different slices, that's your world. And work is one section of that world, especially in an athlete's sort of world. Is you've still got your diet, you've, like Lewis said, you've got your exercise, your sleep. And we'll go back to exercise in a minute, because I've even seen corporate people now in the world that treat exercise poorly. It can just be movement, but mindfulness, diet, all of the different facets. And so what he actually meant when he was talking about sort of working harder is actually working harder on himself in order to be able to deliver more, and putting himself in the center of that pizza or that wheel in order to affect others. So where do we start? I mean, Lewis, do you want to just sort of, go ahead with this bit first, and then I'll come and help?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at Teacup, we measure on 9 areas of, it's our HIHASU formula. We see these as the key 9 areas that impact your life on a day-to-day basis most. And we very much see 3 of those areas in the health as areas that you can control, diet, activity, and hydration. 3 areas that on a daily basis, you as individuals have the ability to control. We can control how much we move. We can control the food that we consume, and, we can make sure that we are hydrated. Through controlling, I guess, those 3 controllables, they can then have a positive influence on other elements of our well-being: sleep, mood, relationships, stress, ambition. If we're eating correctly, if we're keeping hydrated, if we're on top of our exercise, it's going to allow us that opportunity to get the best night's sleep. We can't always control things like sleep and mood, but we can certainly control things that can have an impact and an influence on sleep and mood and stress and things like that. So for us at Teacup, and I'll let Lee speak on the circles of control here, and then I'll come on to show you a little bit of a case study that we did with a client, and show you the impact of what you can do when you focus on those three areas.
Yeah, I suppose from my point of view, one of the things that I was trying to think today when getting the opportunity to chat to you all was to sort of think, what are the key lessons that you can take away? And I think for me, firstly, is that you're working with the next generation, our future generation. So as role models and as teachers, not only are you imparting knowledge and helping them to grow, but you're also setting that the role modeling piece. And I think it's so often the key that we look up to role models, and if everyone is super stressed, I think it passes on through. So how we manage ourselves is very key to the impact that we have on people. And I do one of my favorite quotes is from a famous American poet, Maya Angelou, and it's not what you did or what you said, it's how you made people feel. And I think the more we can work on that, the bigger impact we can have. So the next tool I'd like you to sort of, after taking that one away, is how do you analyze what's going on in your world, whether it's the pizza and all the different elements. But in times of change and times of crisis, sometimes you just need to be subjective. And being in education, I do believe for you with pens and stuff, I think the power of the pen is so important. And this is an exercise that I really encourage you to try when you're under great stress, or when you're looking at change. And how this works is you've got the three circles there, and you can visualize all the stuff that's going on in your life. This comes from a guy called Stephen Covey. He wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. But it allows you to just take away the noise and really focus on the facts. And so here, your circle of concern, this can be anything that you really care about, but you've got no control over. I have no control over how badly Arsenal played last night, and I really wanted to see 4 teams in all the finals of the Championship. It's in my concern, but I cannot control it. Then you've got your circle of influence. So this is now, again, I can't control with all the elections who votes where. I've got a bit of an influence. I can cast my vote. I can be sort of, involved, but I can't actually do anything about it. So that's your influence there. And then the lastly is your innermost circle. And this is all the things like your physical fitness, your emotional experience, identifying all the things in your world that you can control. And it's a very good exercise to just write down what's going on here, what is perception, and then what is reality, and actually start to write down in those boxes, so that you can take a bit more control back.
Perfect. Love that. Thank you, Lee. The power of the pen. I was certainly taking that away. I think what we're going to do now, we're just going to have a little look through a case study. So, and this is a case study of one of our Teacup clients. And when you look at the graph here, what we've got here is a view of the organization's overall well-being, the health, the happiness, and the success. And when you look at it on this level, well-being issues are really hard to identify when done on a mass scale. It's when looking at this, you think, oh, and if we imagine this to be a little bit like a heartbeat, it looks quite good to me. I'm no doctor. Lee, looks all right. What do you think? Looks good? Perfect.
Yeah, up and down, spiky, yeah.
Yeah. But then when we start to delve into it, and this is where we see, no 2 people are the same. One person's great day could be another person's hellish day. So here we've got the same data, which we've now split by team. So you can relate this to, if you're thinking in schools, you guys have got separate teams, separate year groups, different teachers, different individuals. No one person is the same. And as we're looking at this, this is, if we can imagine this as 3 individuals, and then you've got the aggregated data of all of them in the middle with the white. There's a lot going on here. They're all having a different time, a difficult time. And when we start to break that data down and look at it a little bit deeper, what we've done here is highlighted. So if you look there with the yellow line, we're just going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into this team. And on this, with this client, we noticed looking at the data, the well-being was all over the place. If we go back to the first slide, that heartbeat there, this is the same data over the same time period. We've just broken it down. These guys are having a really, really difficult time. And when we were talking to the client, they said, look, budget's a real issue. we can't afford to spend money on wellbeing initiatives. What can we do? And this is where the whole concept of influence versus control came about. What we said to the guys is, look, you can't spend money, you can't do this, you can't give people more money, you can't pay people more, but what we can do is we can focus on our health, we can focus on our activity, we can focus on our diet, we can focus on our hydration. And when we take a deeper dive into that, and the learning from this is, start with what you can control. There's no quick fixes, but we have to make a step in the right direction. So this graph looks a little bit messier, but you can start to see where we made the impact point, and the team started to look after their diet, activity, their hydration. Yes, it's still up and down. Everybody has a good day. Everybody has a bad day. But what's quite interesting to note is when we now take a look at health and the impact that this then had on the success of the team, as you can see through June and July, some really big, undulations in this graph, some big stresses. And, when you start to see the impact of the initiatives, just focusing on the simple things that you can control, diet, activity, hydration, the impact that had positively on the levels of stress within the team. You can see here really big ups and downs, which is no good at all. You want to try and have that steady line, that steady, gentle well-being, as opposed to up days, down days, and even ambition on the rise. And then you can sort of see gently that the team has gone from a really tough time, not focusing on things they can control. They've interjected and thought, right, let's do some activity challenges, some hydration challenges, diet, focus on what we're eating, what's going into our bodies. And the impact that then has on the stress and the ambition of the team, really positive. So sometimes you can't do everything, but you must do something. And starting with those really simple little tips and tricks of focusing on your diet, what's going in, are you getting enough veg, fruits, are you eating whole meals? And the same with hydration. I think, for us at Teacup, we often reflect on our hydration. We've all got water bottles, but it's a really simple thing. And I remember when I started with Teacup, a little story off tangent for you, but my dad, he works as a BT engineer, and he was saying, headaches, Lewis, all the time. I'm really struggling. I said, well, what's your hydration like, Dad? And he said, well, yeah, really, really good, actually. I have 2 litres a day. And I thought, so that's weird. He is quite on top of it. He said, yeah. He said, 2 litres of coffee a day. And it blew my mind. I was like, what about water? No water at all? He said, no, nothing. So bought him a drinks bottle, set him on his way. And he's all over his hydration, and he's seen a big improvement in how he feels, much less lethargic through the day. So coming back to, I guess, what Lee talked about there about Gary Player, the harder you work, the luckier you get. This comes back to that pizza concept. Work hard on the things that you can control, your health, your diet, human connections. We can make more effort with other people. We can try and build our relationships, reach out to someone who you've not spoke to in a while, see how they're doing, eating superfoods. This one's funny, bacon's the worst food you can eat, but have a piece on occasion. Little things like that. It's about focusing on the things that you can do to improve you as an individual. And I don't know if you want to touch in and add anything on this piece here, Lee.
I suppose, well, for me, it's I'd love to hear from people in the audience around, sort of some of the issues that they're facing around wellness, and maybe we can relate some stories to there. But I just think the more that we look after our self-care, and the more that we focus on the stuff that we can control. Nowadays, we're so bombarded. So has anyone got any questions, or anyone want to join in and test us? Because I love to chat these things through and have a healthy debate.
I'll stop sharing and open up. Yeah, do any questions in terms of what we spoke about there, or maybe any challenges that you guys are facing at the moment that you would like to quiz Lee or myself on in terms of well-being, or even just a random curveball question. Feel free. Lee does enjoy a test.
Come on, don't be shy. Nobody's got any questions for us. Well, we're laughing.
I'm sure Dylan's got one up his sleeve.
I'll talk then, but I mean, I was interested. Go on.
Dylan's in, he's
ready. I was going to say, you know, in a difficult time that we're in, especially in a school environment where there are restrictions in place and there are different teams within a school setting, how would you take the first step to encouraging the team to obviously work on these things as individuals? You know, how would you introduce that to a whole team, and how would you try and implement the change and get people on board with this idea?
So I think from my point of view, with this type of stuff, again, is that we always sort of say, if you're not assessing, you're guessing. And assumptions, we all make lots and lots of assumptions around, oh, well, I think so and so this team's doing really well, or that team's, you know, not doing so well. And we saw it even in the remote world. The minute everyone became remote, we started to get sort of more fractured, and people were even further away because it's very difficult to read the different body languages. So I would say straight away, you just want to find out, ask the question, how is everybody doing? What's going on in your world, our world, that can really make a difference? And then once you understand the issues, then you can start to work away and start to solve some of the problems. And this is what we found quite a bit with Teacup, is that you make assumptions, people assume something's happening, and it isn't until you see that raw data that you can actually sort of start to make differences. I've just had someone here, Tracy said, I have a quote for Lee that you might like regarding the power of the pen. One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen that can change the world. Yes, I love that.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy.
It's so key. Did that answer your question though, Dylan? So get to the root of the problem. I always talk about the what's going on. Then you can start to work on the how.
Yeah. And
then you can see who's going to do what and when. Yeah,
that's great. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. I think what might be useful, Lee, and I guess, you know, whilst we are, you know, the environment in schools is hard at the moment for teachers. You know, what would be your top tips for resilience in this time? Not to put you on the spot.
No, it's very good, very good. Well, I think, again, without sort of preaching, you know, it is sleep for me is definitely one of the biggest healers. And I even saw it then, and I wanted to pick on myself a little bit around with the Teacup and stress. For me, stress is, and if you go into the real scientific side of things, stress is stress is an emotion that is supposed to keep us alive. If you believe in evolution, over time, we've come from sort of the middle of the food chain where, you know, we're eating, we're trying to beat and trying to survive, danger, danger, danger. So the way the body works is you flood your body with adrenaline. Stress causes adrenaline, which then flushes the body. You then can do superhuman stuff, whether that is, you know, and we've seen it in the news, females rip car doors off to save, you know, a loved one, a child, lift, you know, do stuff, escape, run away. And that's all fueled by adrenaline. And that's for life-saving, you know, times. What we've done is we've changed and we've created pressure, and there's good and bad pressure, but it's performance pressure. It's, you know, pressure to get work done. You know, we can dial it up, dial it down, but we've changed that wording for stress. And that can be, I'm stressed, I've got too many emails. And the amount of damage that we cause ourselves running on pure adrenaline, because a byproduct of adrenaline is cortisol. And we know that cortisol is responsible for quite a few of the long-term illnesses. So I just think, in answer to your question, Liz, what's one of the biggest things? Sleep can wash away cortisol. It is our best way. And I think nowadays, which is why I had that, you know, that quote around the harder I work, the luckier I get. Yeah, that is not the case. He did not mean that when he said it. He meant the harder he worked on himself, having quizzed him on it, the better he got. So I think just an easy one is sleep. Like you mentioned earlier, diet. You know, I suppose I did mention the exercise one, and I'll just have a bit of a rant on that, but it is all linked.
I was just about to build you into it because you mentioned the cortisol piece.
Well, again, because I've been lucky enough to work with you know, athletes and senior sort of, you know, senior business execs, that there was this perception of, I work really, really hard. I will, especially as a CEO, I'll stay up all night replying to emails. I will sort of burn the candle at both ends with clients, probably have a few too many beers, and then I will get up the next day and I'll do a 20k run because I'm fit and I'm strong. And then he wonders, and I've had a couple where they wonder why they're getting heart palpitations. They're wondering why the body's starting to fight back, and it's because you cannot do that. You both produce high intensity exercise produces cortisol. High stress situations produce cortisol, and like I said, this chemical is really, really bad. So sometimes, and some people run a mile with exercise, and it's something that I had to learn, is actually too much exercise can be really bad. When we say exercise, it could just be moving, going for a walk, just getting up, wandering around. Like you can see me now, I'm at a stand-up desk because I'm not a massive fan of sitting down all day. I think it's really, the science, I love a bit of science, does say it's quite bad for you. So therefore, you start to, it's more about movement to help you with your cortisol, because a good walk in bright sunshine can actually do more good for your health than actually going on a 10k run. And I'll probably say that because I'm a fatty, but no, it is true.
No, thank you, Lee. Any more questions, I guess, from anyone? We've had a little note in from Tracy, which we touched on, but anyone within the audience today that's got anything that they would like to ask on what we've talked about. There are a couple more slides, but very aware that I don't want to PowerPoint people to death, or but we'd be good to have some open conversations, or answer any questions that you guys might have about some of the current issues that you're potentially facing inside and outside of the workplace. Or I'll just get Lee to tell stories.
I don't reckon there's anyone on their list. They're all I
know,
they're gone on lunch. Apart from Tracy. Come on, Tracy, come and have a chat with us.
I'll add another in just to keep the conversation going. In terms of the experience you've had with these discussions, whether that is in a school setting, in education, or in organisations, are there any kind of, what do you think the most common objections are to, to getting on the right path or taking those first steps in controlling the controllables?
Yeah, we get lots of barriers. The first one is always, I don't have time. I haven't got time. I haven't got time. And this is the bit that I was sort of alluding to right at the beginning, that especially as a teacher, and again, that's why I want some debate, because I'm happy to be shot down, but we're role models as teachers. And so if we are exuding huge amounts of stress, the kids will sort of start to pick up on it, and you have that influence. So time is, how do you carve out enough time to make sure, and I use the analogy of the oxygen mask. You cannot put the oxygen mask on someone else until you have it on yourself. So, by creating time, by being disciplined around that time, finding the key markers, because for some people it may be different. And this is where I'm very up for individuals. Some individuals have to go on a run to make them feel better. Some people can operate with not such a good diet, but I do think you have to work out what makes you your best. When do you operate at your best, and how do you perform in your job as a teacher ahead of whichever role you're assuming? But I think time's one. I think discipline's another. Then that main bit that we said about earlier, making assumptions. Well, I think I'm okay, or I think last time I did this it wasn't great for me, or that's no good. It's really drilling down to actually know, what is it that makes me the best that I can be? What is it of my makeup, health, wealth, happiness, and success that that can make me a better person? Because as you know, the more fulfilled you feel, the better impact you can have on others.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Lee. I've got a question for the audience here, and I guess it's one that will help us with that question of assessing or guessing. Does anybody on the call today journal? Do any of you guys reflect Do you come to the end of your day and think, oh, how was today? In terms of teaching, how were the children? How was I? How were my relationships at home? How was my diet? How was my activity? How was my hydration? Does anybody journal here? Does anyone reflect? Does anyone use anything to help them with that process? I would be keen to see yeses or nos, either or. Not a test. You can't fail. But I think for me, touching back on Lee's point of assessing or guessing, before I joined Teacup, my previous world as an elite athlete, I guess, everything was done for me. I was, my stroke was measured, my diet was measured, my gym program was set out, my swimming training regime was completely set out. Everything was done, boxed off, completely done. I didn't have to think about anything. When I left that world, not ashamed to say that I did have a bit of a bad time. I had a hard time, because you can lose yourself. You can very much get stuck in the wheel of life. You get your head down, you put your head down, and you just turn the wheel as hard as you can. And sometimes it takes quite a big life event to get you to stop, pause, and reflect. And I think for me, unfortunately, I had a few big life events, pre-COVID, that forced me to stop, pause, and reflect. And was lucky then to join Teacup. And I think if I can give you guys, another takeaway for today is, don't be afraid to just press pause a little bit. I think you guys are all in extremely difficult jobs. You've got really tough roles where there's a lot of pressure. And, celebrate some of the small wins that you have along the day. Try and, when you come to the end of your day, just tick off 3 things that you're happy with, and it could be something really, really simple as, yeah, I made my bed, or, little simple goals that you can get as wins for your day that can add up, and then you can start building those 3 wins, 5 wins, 6 wins, 7 wins. And I see we're getting a little bit more interaction in the chat here, which is awesome. So I think Lee's having a little monitor of that. But, I would encourage you guys, if you can, just to, try and do a little bit of journaling. It can be quite refreshing, something for me that I've not done before. And now I'm a regular journaler, regular reflector. And it does help. It helps you when times are hard and you're looking back and thinking, oh, gosh, it's tough, really hard. But actually you can start to add up your little wins, and understand a little bit more about yourself, which then in turn allows you to be, really present for those people around you, whether it's at home, your friends, or, for the children at school or your other teachers. So that's my little story.
I love that as well. Just reading there, Dan's, he said his microphone's playing up, but he implemented at their school, talking to someone during the end of the school meeting, just a few minutes, short and sharp, 3 positive things that have happened to us in the last 24 hours. And then talk about the role we played in at least one of them and how it made us feel and the positive impact. And that's that whole bit of, you realize you're moving forward, you're getting positive affirmations, you're realizing that you're further forward, some good stuff. I'm further forward now than I was this morning, and creating that positive energy around can really transform the mood of a team, a staff room. There's some good stuff around reflecting on each lesson, thinking about how the children were. I always get stuck in a cycle of books, looks. So I think it's really key. So that's a great one. I think quite a few people have jumped on that reflecting and journaling, Lewis.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Dan, as well. I think what's quite powerful about the opportunity within some of these sessions as well is to share learnings, to help other people. Ultimately we're all here to try and do some good in the world, and I think that's why I'm proud to be part of Teacup. With our mission, we want to help people look after themselves and make a positive impact. And I think the power of what Dan shared there is really great. Everyone now can have that as a little takeaway. So yeah, really good. I think if anyone's got anything else they want to put in the chat, it's a question. I think Lee's got a point with his pen.
Yeah, I just got one last point on the on, I think it's Seabird. There's reflect on the last lesson, thinking about how the children were. And I think that's a really good thing to do. And one of the bits that it sort of links to this circle of control is it's worth understanding what do you go to school for? What do you want to be remembered for as a teacher? What do you want to be remembered for as a partner in a relationship. And once you know what you want people to say about you, it's a lot easier to then link back, well, what are the 4 or 5 things I need to do to make an impact on that, whether it's the children, whether it's on parents, whether it's on, bosses. And then once you understand what are those steps, you can go after them a lot more, that rather than sometimes we get bombarded by, well, I'm a really good teacher if I do all my emails. I'm a really good teacher if I've reviewed every lesson. And so trying to get away some of the noise and work on the key deliverables that can help you be, because there's no right or wrong, you be who you want to be. Does that help, Lewis?
Yeah, no, that's a lovely one, Lee. Thank you. So I think we had a note in the chat as well whilst you were just talking there. Here we go.
An after school workout session once a week, brings people together. They're reluctant at first, but more are starting to join in. It's starting a movement, isn't it? It's getting momentum behind it.
And I think that's it. And that almost relates back to what we were trying to say before. When we're looking at it on an individual basis, it's taking that first step is often the most difficult thing to do. For me, taking the first step in reflecting and a bit of a deep dive on my own life and my own experiences, that was hard. But actually, off the back of it, it's been hugely powerful for me. I think, Friday with Lucy, we have a Friday coffee session for teachers after school, no work, can just sit and talk. And I think that's something that's brilliant as well. We have it at Teacup is, we have a couple of meetings in the diary in the week that are just there for just open conversation. And I think it's, if you can create an environment that you can have safe, open conversation with your peers, with other teachers, that non-judgmental, that's when you can really start to, have safe conversations and open up and create those support bubbles and those buddy groups where if you're having a bad day, you've got people that you can go to where you can just offload a little bit and, open up your stress tap and drain some of it out.
I think that's a key one there, Lewis, just around work. We sort of try and box off because that's the way we work sometimes, work, life. And if you look at it, some of us probably spend more time at work than we do with our loved ones at home. So therefore, it really baffles me at times to think, well, hang on, your family really, really well, yet we're transactional in the place where we probably spend most of our time. And so is it not better to, would you live a more fulfilling life if those relationships were deeper in the place that you worked? Because then it means something. You're doing something for a reason rather than that transactional, I go to work, I get paid, and I know teachers don't do that but I see it in the business world where it's that Friday, brilliant, just get to know each other. All of a sudden that's really powerful because then why someone's doing what they're doing. And I think it's a really good thing. And having been part of high level sports teams or chatting to people at high end military, those are the connections that are really powerful. At school, we have a frat day on a payday where we'll order takeaway. Yes, lovely. These are the kind of things. Brilliant.
Yeah, really. That's great. Yeah, and it's all good. And it's all the common theme here is, bringing people together. I think that's important. And, in this time, it's important to create that culture of support where you can feel valued. And like Lee said, understand why your peers are in the environment. What is their purpose? Can you take any learnings from them? I often try my best to, learn from others around me. I'm very fortunate that I've got some very interesting and inspirational people around me. And, I'm not often, I'm forever getting at Lee, asking him questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And, there's huge power in asking a question. I think, if you can ask a question, if you want to find out some information, ask that question, start a conversation. You never know where that might lead.
Curiosity is one of the best traits.
Yeah, awesome. Anybody else got any other questions or statements to put in the chat? Any learnings that they found work well for their environment at all? I feel like we've got a little bit more traction with the chat now, which is great to see.
I'll just recap the 3 key points that I think we wanted to land today is that obviously the controllables, if you're really overwhelmed, to narrow down what it is that you want to control, use that. Then where are you going? What are you trying to do? what do you want? How can you get it? Who does what when? And then the last bit, I think from me, I don't know whether to do the curiosity or the oxygen mask, but I'd really like people to, put the oxygen mask on themselves before doing it to others. It's not selfish, it's self-care.
Yeah, I think that's one of your favourites, isn't it, Lee? Is with the oxygen mask. I think it's something that you've told me a few times, because it is important. You know, if you can't be the best version of yourself, then how are you going to, help those people that you're trying to help? You know, you need to really look after yourself first to allow yourself the opportunity to help others. So yeah, oxygen mask is my top one from Lee. Dylan, any more questions from you? Brianne has joined. Hello, Brianne.
Yeah, lovely, Tracy.
Absolutely. I think that's a key point, Tracy, as well, is, the things we've spoke about here in terms of controllables. These can be passed down and, imparted the knowledge on the children. Talk to them about things they can control: their diet, their activity, their hydration. Help them help themselves. So yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, I think that's it from us on the teacup side of influence versus control. I do hope that you found that valuable. If any of you guys have got any sort of further questions or questions you didn't want to ask in the chat, feel free to to reach out. I'll pop my email in the chat here if you need. And there are a couple of things that we do at Teacup that can help you with that assessing and guessing piece. More than happy to offer some opportunities for you guys who've been part of this webinar for free. I think it's important that we give back. So if any of you are interested in anything like that, then please do get in touch. We very much want to help from Teacup side of things. It's a difficult time at the moment, and we want to give what we can to do our bit as well.
I just want to make that point on with Tracy there around it shows the children how to self-care as well. I think whether you do or don't know it, as role models, it's so huge. I obviously look up to my parents. I realise that they have some faults as well once I got a bit older, but still to this day, if you ask who had some of the biggest influences on me, I would still say quite a few of my teachers. I could name them if you wanted to, but I think you're in such a key position, and so yeah, I think you do a wonderful job.
Perfect. Dylan, anything you'd like to ask from our side, or even Brianna, she's just joined briefly?
No, just for myself, just a thank you for that. Really insightful. I think it's given people a picture of, I suppose, the other side of education, not just educating people around the curriculum and the statutory things, but also about personal well-being. Because ultimately, taking care of yourself is just as important, isn't it? And if you're not fully functioning and you're not 100% as an educator or working in a business, you're not going to be able to give 100%. So it's just about taking that on board, working on the controllables, which I think yourself and Lee have put that across really nicely. So thank you for that. Just kind of a touch point from me as well is if you would like any further information on that from Lewis or Lee, I know he's put his contact details in. Teacup are on our partner page on our website. There's a little bit more info about that kind of the products and the services that they offer, not only for organisations or school settings, but also for young people as well. They do work right across the sector, ranging right down from your EYFS children right the way through to school leavers. So there is that option there. You can contact a member of our team, or you can obviously go directly to Lewis and the Teacup team as well with that. Perfect.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for your time and interaction in the chat. Tracy, another great point there, just quickly. Yeah, as Lee said, there's a number of teachers that had super influence on me as a young man, and certainly helped me with my journey as well. Ian Wright, I think it was Tracy, yeah. I remember the episode. Super. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Lewis. If you could pass the host back over to myself, that would be great.
I'll pass the baton. I'm going to find you. The joys of technical.
Is that
there we go.
Smashing.
Super.
Perfect. Just while we get set up for the next workshop, which is delving into deep dives, I'll share my screen. We're just going to have, stop my share there, apologies. We'll just have 5 minutes, you know, if you need to stretch your legs or you want to get a cup of tea or anything like that. And then we'll begin in 5 minutes with Steve Busby delving into deep dives.